does anybody care? This planet's empty, I see no signs of life. Please don't tell me that the human race did not survive. There are no people in the future. There are no people. There are no people in the future. No people at all. There are no people in the future. Where did all my people go? There are no people in the future. Let me try my people call. Where are all my people? Where are all my people? I guess I'll fly away now.
Hey, everybody, welcome. Yes, it is a Monday, May 22nd, 2023. Welcome to Raging Chicken's Out to Coop Live. And yes, it is a Monday morning edition of Out to Coop Live. Oof. This is Kevin Mahoney, creator and founder of Raging Chicken. And Out to Coop Live, we talk to progressives, activists, and troublemakers of all sorts, right from our own backyards and across the country. You can also join us at the end of the week for our Friday Politics Roundup, where we break down the good, the bad, and the ugly in state and national politics. You can get all our shows by subscribing to our podcast on Podbean, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. You can support this show by becoming a patron for as little as $5 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/rcpress. You can also help out the show by heading over to our YouTube channel if you're not there already. Smash that subscribe button, like the stream for this show, and hit that notification bell so you know every time that we go live. And if you're one of our awesome podcast listeners, give us that 5-star review. Leave a comment. Let other people know why you like the show. It helps other people find the show. For more PA progressive talk, tune into the Rick Smith Show's live stream at 9 p.m. Eastern. You can check him out on his YouTube channel, Twitter, Facebook, wherever you get your streams. Just go over to thericksmithshow.com if you got any questions. That'll give you the latest across all his platforms. And you got to check out the Sisters of the Night Caucus podcast. The amazing PA women stirring the political cauldron behind this podcast rock the house. And they know where the bodies are buried. Make sure to follow them on Twitter at the Night Caucus. That's at the Night Caucus on Twitter. And subscribe to their podcasts on Anchor, Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your podcast. If you haven't heard, The Signal is a new podcast from the Bucks County Beacon. The Signal is hosted by the Beacon's editor-in-chief, Cyril Michaleko, and produced by yours truly. And matter of fact, that's why we're doing this morning show today. Because we're going to be doing a Signal show tonight. We're going to be recording it. It's going to be a good one this week, everybody. Anyways, The Signal will shine a light on the right-wing extremist currents streaming through Bucks County and beyond. Cyril invites guests who can provide insight, analysis, and organizing solutions so that we can steer the community toward calmer, saner, progressive roots. Head on over to buckscountybeacon.podbean.com or get your podcast, get that podcast, get The Signal, wherever you get your podcasts. And for all you gamers out there, the Game Inn is a Quakertown-based black family-owned gaming store. They're friends of the show, and they've got everything for retro N64s, the latest consoles, video games for all platforms, collectibles, action figures, Funko Pops, walls of Funko Pops, and kids get discounts when they get A's in the report card. It's almost the end of the school year, everybody. Woof. Check them out on their Facebook page and follow them on Twitter at The Game In. If you've got a question about a game, look for something hard to get, shoot them a message or drop them an email at thegameinpa@gmail.com. And a shout out goes to Jonathan Mann, who wrote our intro song, There Are No People in the Future. You can get all his great stuff on his YouTube page or follow him on Twitter at @SongADayMan. That's with 2 N's, at @SongADayMan on Twitter. And boy, is the school board elections heating up. And we cannot let Paul Martino, Moms for Liberty, and their oligarch friends buy our schools and push extremist politics in our community. Raging Chicken has teamed up with Levelfield to launch a truly community-rooted PAC to invest in organizing, supporting local and statewide progressive candidates, and unmasking the toxic organizations injecting our communities with right-wing extremism. Putting small dollar donations to work to beat back the power of big money. You get more information and drop your donation at ragingchicken.levelfield.net. And on this week's show, today's show, we're just kind of doing a little reflective kind of day. We're also going to be bringing back something a little bit new. Good morning, Emily. So we'll be talking a little bit about the Pennridge School Board meeting last week. Maybe a little bit about the PA primary, in particular as it relates to what's happening in Bucks County schools and what it means for this year's election. And the Bucks County GOP, of course, is offering up more extremism, but the community is organizing to kick out the clowns and send the circus packing. What I meant by try something a little, well, not quite, is different, but we haven't done it in a while, I should like to say. I'm going to open up the phones today, so to speak. If you are watching right now on YouTube, you will notice that there is a link that I put into chat that will allow you to join the show through riverside.fm. So that's kind of, we do most of the recording when I'm, we record guests, we record offline, and this kind of allows for a little back and forth. If you remember, kind of last year, actually before we switched over to riverside.fm, we were doing some call-in shows on Podbean, and it was kind of interesting. I mean, we did it on Podbean. We got a lot of folks. We'd get folks from kind of like across the country, right? That would call in for all sorts of things, right? That was kind of cool, and we did it as a little bit of a separate show than the interview show, just to kind of see how that would work. We switched over to Riverside. We did a little bit of that too as well. And I've been toying with this idea for a bit about, I don't know if would do it every Friday, but to have that kind of call-in show, we got to hear more from people in the community, where there's that interaction was built into, the kind of work that we're doing here at Raging Chicken. And man, it's like the weird lighting stuff today. I don't know what the deal is with that. But anyways, so what I dropped in, you'll notice that I dropped into the chat today on YouTube, is an audience call-in, right? And it's riverside.fm/out-decoup-live, right? Not very helpful, but it's it's only going to matter if you listen to live. Obviously, if you do this when you're watching the show afterwards, you won't be able to call in. But if there's some things that are on your mind, because I'm really, I've been thinking, here's why I was doing this today, right? So number one, it's a little bit of an off day show. And when I do kind of off time or off day shows, for some reason that makes me feel like I can experiment a little bit more with format, than normal. I've been thinking a lot about what's been happening in our school boards, and I keep on hearing from listeners about things that are popping up in school boards that we have not necessarily focused a whole lot on, but are nonetheless, it's the same thing. So, for example, you may have seen this in the Souderton Area School District. Which is, if you take Central Bucks, if I'm in Pennridge, I take Central Bucks is to the east, Souderton is a little bit, I guess, kind of southwest from here. But in the Souderton Area School District, there has been an active emerging campaign, right, to go after the teachers union, right? And that's not changing, and that's only going to ramp up, right? And we've also seen that there's been the same kind of extremist politics have been making their way into that school district. We also know in Telford, which again, right over by Souderton, right, kind of over by, right next town over from Percy kind of thing, that they had these attacks on the public libraries, right? There's an attempt to defund the public libraries and move that money into the police department, right? But the bigger issue, moving the money to the police department, that's kind of, for my purposes right now, that is the secondary issue. The primary issue was the grounds by which they wanted to defund the public library was over the same kind of things that we see in the book banning in Central Bucks School District, right, in Pennridge School District and others. Right? Up in Palisades School District, right? Now, we have talked a little bit about Palisades, particularly during the last round of school board elections. But Palisades is seeing kind of like this creeping craziness too as well. Megan Bannis Clemens has recently spoke up there. Megan Bannis Clemens, of course, is the Red Wizard from Thay herself in Pennridge, and she is not running again for Pennridge School Board, but she's spreading the good word, as it were, apparently to other school districts. So there's that. The Kutztown area school district, which again, I don't have any kids in, and that's not in Bucks County; it's in Bucks County. And I know I'm familiar with that primarily because I teach at the university there, and so I have friends that live in the area and so on, and start finding out what's going on there. Right? You remember we had Alan Gratz on the show. His book 2 Degrees was being basically banned from the Kutztown area school district. I don't know if that's exactly the right wording. They were supposed to read his book for this kind of one school, one book program. They were going to give out free copies to all the middle schoolers there. They're all going to read it together. And then he was coming to Kutztown for a children's literature conference, right, in April. And so they said, hey, this is great. We'll read the book, right? We'll talk about it, one thing, and then we'll actually get a chance to have an event with him, right? But because it dealt with climate change, right? Again, the extremist currents within that school district, again, said, no, we can't teach our kids about climate change unless you actually, give equal time to the climate deniers, right? Which is insane. So they just canceled the whole program, right? It was a grant-funded program and all this other stuff. We had Alan Gratz on the show talk about that. We also had Robin Underwood, who was kind of one of the leaders of a kind of parent community group there called Coffee. Kutztown organized for fairness, for education equality, education equity. I'm beating it. I'm not doing well with that. But the organization is Coffee, and they're kind of organizing again the same way that, say, parents and community members in Pennridge, the parents and community members in Central Bucks are kind of organizing there. The Kutztown area school district also saw the influx of Paul Martino money. Right, the $10,000 was dropped into that school board election during the last round of elections, just like it was here in Pennridge, just like it was over in Central Bucks, and some of the surrounding districts too as well. Right. So we've also, so all this stuff is kind of happening, and I thought that it might be useful, especially over the summer, to have these opportunities just to have, say, open conversation, open phones, as it were, where people could call in and talk about what's happening in their community. Now, I don't know how this is going to work today, in part because I didn't let anybody know I was going to do this, so it's it's kind of we've got a few people that have called in already, or a few people who are kind of I know that are watching right now. But so let me just give you just some kind of directions, as it were, right? Some instruction about how to do this. So in the chat, in the live YouTube chat right now, you will find a link. And it says to call into the show. Now, one thing that you'll make sure that you need to before you would actually call in through riverside.fm, you need to make sure that you turn the volume off on YouTube, right? Or I should say, you could do that simultaneously, right? You could actually call into Riverside, and then once you started hearing the show at Riverside, make sure you turn off the silence, or turn the speaker off, or turn the volume off on your YouTube. Otherwise, we'll get an echo. And then it'll show up on my screen, right? It'll pop up on my screen that you're calling in. And then, I'd love to hear what you got to say. Let me know what's kind of going on. So in the meantime, we'll kind of get into a few things. I've got some sound to play for what's going on. So I guess the place to start is with the last Pennridge School Board meeting, which is really what's been on my mind quite a bit. And I know it's been on the mind of a lot of folks who listen to the show. It was chaotic. It was more of the off the rails, arguing going on, people cutting each other off. There were parents who were getting up to speak, and community members were getting up to speak, and they were told that they couldn't speak or couldn't comment on certain things, in particular the contract with Vermilion Education. What was fascinating to me was that the school district is employing a lawyer, right, to attend these meetings, right, and they're paying this lawyer. And so they basically handed over the meeting to the lawyer to regulate, and basically scrutinized every single person who came up to speak for public comment, to make sure that their comments were kind of appropriate for the agenda. Right? There's a rule, right, as part of the public comment, that there's these 2 public comment periods. Right? The first public comment period is where people are speaking to items that are on the agenda, right? The second comment period is an open one, right, where people want to say other things. So the argument from Megan Bannis Clemens in particular, right, and the lawyer, right, was that these comments, the comments that were made by the first parent who got up to talk about Vermilion Education, the problems with that contract. Remember, Vermilion Education is it's a for-profit company that is only 4 months old, maybe 5 months old now. It was founded by Jordan Adams, who was a graduate of Hillsdale College, which is basically a kind of right-wing Christian for-profit college in Michigan, right? Or I don't know if they're for-profit, technically for-profit. They're, whatever. But they, they put together this curriculum, which is basically, kind of Christian nationalism light, if you will, right? And, this kind of American exceptionalism, Christian nationalism kind of light curriculum that they're shopping around, right? Hillsdale, that is, and it's a K through 12 curriculum. Vermilion Education is now basically consulting with school districts on how to revise their curriculum to make it more, Christian nationalist, I guess. So it was the contract to hire this guy was sprung on everybody. It's $125 an hour plus expenses with no cap on expenses. And it was to rewrite the K through 12 social studies curriculum in the Pennridge School District. Now, this is going to happen after this past December, right? The same school board reduced the social studies requirements from 4 to 3 classes, right? So they reduced it by 1, which already caused, pretty much an outrage. And then teachers had to figure out, how the heck are we going to do this now? And so they've been working on changing the curriculum and updating the curriculum to make sure that they can cover what they need to cover now in only 3 classes, right? So all that was kind of going on. And so, a parent gets up to speak. And she's speaking to Vermilion Education, and one of the items that is on the agenda for that night is the budget, right? But she was shut down, and she was told that she could not speak about it, right? Even as people are like, well, wait a minute, this is about the budget, right? And this is kind of germane to the budget, but they said no because it was not explicitly on the agenda, right? And there was this back and forth about, well, you've just approved a contract with somebody that you're going to spend $125 an hour plus all expenses with an open-ended contract with no cap. That's part of the budget, right? I mean, and if it's not part of where's that money coming from? Right? I mean, that's a legitimate question. So there may not have been an agenda item that was approving the Vermilion contract, but that's certainly a budgetary issue. But they were prevented speaking about that. They were told they were not allowed. They had to wait to the second period. And it got to the point where, Megan Bannis Clemens and this lawyer threatened members of the community to have them forcibly removed from security. They actually called the Pennridge area police or the Percy police. It was Pennridge area police to come there to potentially forcibly remove people from talking about Vermilion Education, right? It was pretty remarkable. And then at one point, Megan Bannis Clemens, right? You had this, David Rice, who's a Rice, whatever, is the chair of the boards ostensibly, but he does, it's like a bump on the log, just doing nothing through the entire meeting, even though he's supposed to be the chair. And Megan Bannis Clemens is basically the vice president. She's basically running the meeting, right? And then she declares that there's going to be a recess, and she gets up and walks off stage, as do her cohorts, Jordan Blomgren, and I believe Ricky Chaikin walked off too as well, and then other members of the board stayed. Right. And so that was part of the context of that meeting, right? And parents were and community members were generally kind of upset, is to be fairly diplomatic about it, right? And I think frustrated is it's an understatement. Because they recognize that that board is not, there's no way that the board is going to listen to what the community has to say. Right? Now, having said that, there's disagreement on the board, but you also have to remember that the disagreement on the board is not necessarily over the content of the curriculum. Right? It's not necessarily, with the exception of Ron Wirtz. Ron Wirtz is that one, I believe he's a Republican, right? But he's on that board. He ran with Megan Bannis Clemens and Jordan Blomgren and Ricky Chaikin as part of the kind of the last round of elections. Like parents over politics was their slogan. Right? He ran on that with them. Right? But he has since part ways. But the parting of ways is not necessarily, well, I don't want to talk specifically about Ron Wirtz, but the disagreements generally on that board are not necessarily over whether or not you kind of are going to teach Christian nationalism, right? It had to do with the way in which that, Jordan Blomgren, David Reese, Megan Bannis Clemens, Ricky Chaikin, and I can't remember who the fifth one is there. The way that they proceeded, right? Because basically that Vermillion contract was kind of brought up at the last minute. That 4 of the 5 members of the board had no idea it was coming. They were being asked to vote on it, right? And Joan Cullen, as if you recall, Joan Cullen was the former chair of that board. And she has been, the primary author of the turn towards extremism on the Pennridge School Board, right? So again, she was the first to say that she was the one who wanted the Hillsdale curriculum to come in first, but this is not the way to do it, right? Her concern and her objection was, one, being kind of shut out of the internal circus. Circus is really what it is. Shut out of that communication and have it sprung upon her, and so that she was basically sidelined in terms of like procedure. And she, I believe, rightfully brought up the fact that by passing a contract to hire somebody without public comment, without kind of the opportunity to review what the budgetary impact was going to be, with an open-ended contract that you have no idea how much is actually you're asking taxpayers to spend in order to support this contract, right? Joan Collins basically saying you're opening up the district for lawsuits, right? And it was, right? And I'm sure that lawsuits are going to come now, right? So let's be clear. So there's not like this 5-4 division on the board is not an ideological division, right? The 5-4 division on the board has more to do with procedural and people who do not like each other, right? So let's be clear about that. Now, Joan Cullen will not be there anymore, and neither will Megan Bannis Clemens, right? The kind of ringleader of the far right on the board, right? But what they also did at that meeting, right, is they also passed their bathroom bill, right? And again, there were objections to it, but again, the people who objected to it were not objecting to the content of it. They were the same. They were basically saying, "Yep, we should discriminate against LGBTQ youth." Yep, that's absolutely right. Right. The issue had more to do with the fact that did not want to leave themselves open for lawsuits, right? Had nothing to do with whether or not they were going to respect LGBTQ rights. They were not. Same with the advocacy bill. If you remember before, they were kind of banning advocacy, right? Which really was about targeting LGBTQ safe spaces or even acknowledgements of their existence, right? So now suddenly people had to pull down pride flags, right? They had to pull down any kind of thing. There was, teachers were now concerned, well, oh, should I pull this down? Should I pull this down? We saw similar actions that happened over in Central Bucks, right? Where a teacher was asked to pull down a quote from Elie Wiesel because it was an advocacy, right? I mean, this is like unbelievable, right? Unbelievable. So anyways, that's what's kind of going on. Like that was what was going on in this past Pennridge. And, as I said this on the show on Friday, but what I've been trying to do is I've been trying to, after these school board meetings, or sometimes during, going back and kind of recording clips of what's happening on or pulling clips, I should say. It's already broadcast, it's already recorded, but pulling clips from those school board meetings to make them a little bit more kind of accessible for everybody, right? Because like sitting through a 3.5 hour school board meeting is enough to put most people to kind of sleep, right? Or kind of like, send them into kind of like a fit of frenzy because it's like so like whatever. That's not most people's cup of tea, right? Most people got other things going on and can't do that. So I thought this would be a great thing. Yes, Jenny says, Independence Law Center had an influence on the rewriting of the policies in Pennridge and had direct communication with Cullen, 100%. Right? The Independence Law Center, of course, right, is this kind of Christian nationalist law firm, right, that has been kind of integral in providing free legal advice, right? That is kind of their MO, right? Providing this free legal advice, right, as a way of teaching school boards how to rewrite their policies, right? And which policies to target, right? In the case of, and Jenny has written about this, just Jenny Stevens, Jenny has written about this, right? Where in the Pennridge School District, right, they basically said, okay, Joan Cullen sent off, stuff to the Independence Law Center and said, hey, well, here's the policies coming up. What you got, right? Can you review all these policies, right? And of course, this is not going to cost the district at all because you've got a billionaire-backed right-wing law firm, right? So they're like, oh, yes, we can take a look at them. And of course, it comes back with, they didn't even respond to most of the policies that Joan Cullen had sent to them. But the ones that they did respond to were like, say, hey, we're going to go after the bathroom policy. We're going to go after the anti-trans stuff. That's what we want, right? We want to go after the book banning. That's what we want. Here's the policies you're going to do. So basically you're saying, hey, we're here to consult. We're here to help, right? But really they've got their own agenda, right? Again, they're looking at this through the lens of Christian nationalism, right? They're looking through this kind of, white supremacy and kind of like, American exceptionalism. And that's what they're going to push in their curriculum, right? The Independence Law Center, and again, there's been reporting on this. Jenny Stevens has reported upon this. We've seen Emily Rizzo has reported on this. We've seen Cyril Michaleko has reported on this. We've had Alyssa Bowen from True North Research on this show multiple times, talking about the dark money and the deep pockets that are funding these kind of national organizations, right? And how they function and how they work. Right. Again, which is one of the primary reasons for a show like this, is that to help try to build out the context to see what's actually going on. Right. So and I hope this is going to come through. So one of the things that I wanted to play today as a little bit of a sound clip is something that happens at the very end of the meeting. Now I know that some people have already. Well, I know not just some. I know there's over like 500 people have checked this out already. So, or I shouldn't say 500. About 300 people or so have checked this out so far. But this is. Here, let me pull it up and make sure I got the sound up.
Just some of the comments.
Okay, it is gonna. I'm pretty sure it's gonna show. Come through. Hope I'm not gonna blast your ears out of here. That's the issue. All right, so this is at the end of it, and it's a little. I'll probably stop this a couple times just for kind of commentary. But what you're hearing is at the very end of this of the last Pennridge School Board meeting. Jordan Blomgren, again, one of the kind of the triumvirate extremists who run the show there. She kind of wants to respond to some of the public comment that was critical of the Vermillion education, and even some of the stuff that was critical of the bathroom bills that they passed. And she wants to say that she wants to kind of basically say, like, too bad, right? I mean, I don't know why people are all upset about this. This is what we got elected here to do, right? Emily just said a similar thing happened in Colorado with a school district adopting the American birthright history curriculum. Yeah, we were talking about that on Friday. I mean, that was kind of one of the main things that we discussed on the Friday show. And yes, Emily, you're right that teachers left that district in spite of an 8% pay increase. Yep, 100%. And one of the things that I talked about on the show on Friday was that one of the board members that was elected in that Colorado school district, who basically within 18 months kind of turned that school district on its head, bringing in this extremist politics, putting in this American birthright curriculum, which is basically the stuff we see the Hillsdale College stuff. What Vermillion Education is bringing into Pennridge is the same principles, same line of thinking. One of the things that they do, that they said in that article, right? They were through a kind of right to know request, you're able to get some of the emails from these people. And one of the board members basically said, yeah, look, this is what we're going to say, this is what we're elected to do. And we're going to, quote unquote, flood the zone, right? That this was a tactic from Steve Bannon. And it was a tactic that they said, yep, this is what Trump did really well. You basically flood the zone. You throw so much stuff at people, right, that they can't keep up, and everyone is always put on their heels, right? This is the same kind of stuff. And one of the things I said on Friday, which is about this clip, really, from Jordan Blomgren, is this argument that we're going to hear it again and again and again, is that like that basically you get what you pay for, right? Is that everyone who is upset about what the school district is doing is basically barking up the wrong tree, because they're doing the work that they were tasked to do. And it's up to, so I'll stop it here. I'll just play a bit and then we'll talk about it. So you'll hear Jordan Blomgren coming in. I hope this sound's going to be good enough.
I just want to speak briefly just to some of the comments tonight, with people saying that we are abusing power. Public schools are public schools because they're controlled by the constituents, which the majority of the community voted us in. I don't believe that we are abusing power. I believe that we are doing exactly what we promised the community that we would be doing.
Okay, so then you hear, there's the argument, right? This is the argument that we're going to hear. We're going to hear this again and again. And you hear there's I think 3 or 4 people in the back that are clapping, right? Everyone else is really pissed. Here's the thing. So Jordan Blomgren makes the argument that the majority of the community voted them and tasked them to do. Now, here's the truth of the matter, right? This is what this obscures, is that the number of people that show up to a municipal year election, right? Some people call them off-year election, but municipal year election, right? Which is like the odd number years, right? This is 2023. That's why there's an election in municipal stuff. So when school boards are elected, generally speaking, right? I'll just give you an idea. So the turnout for last Tuesday's primary, right? Now, again, it's a primary, right? It's a primary in a municipal year election, but it was around 25%, right? 25% of the eligible voters. And we know that of people who are eligible to register to vote, there's not even close to the kind of the vast majority. Right? We're nowhere near 100% voter registration. I could probably pull those numbers if I could find them. Somebody out there knows them, kind of drop them. Let me know what the percentage of registered voter, people who are able to register to vote and who are actual registered. Right? So you have 25% of the eligible voters, of the people who are actually registered to vote, 25% showed up to vote in the primary. That is not that different than who normally shows up in the general election in municipal elections, who might get 30%, maybe 40%. So it is true, what Jordan Blomgren says, is that the majority of people who showed up to vote in 2021 voted for her and the other extremists on the board. But to make the leap and say that the majority of the community wants us to be doing what we're doing is not accurate. She's standing behind her being elected to say that she represents the majority of the community. It's just not true. Now, the problem is, of course, is that she was elected legally, right? I mean, let's put it this way. By the rules of the game, she is elected to do these things because that's the way the election works. And if the majority of the community, my contention is, if the majority of the community does not support this kind of extremism, then the majority of the community has to get out and vote. It's that simple. If the majority of the community stays silent, then people like Jordan Blomgren, Ricky Chaikin, Megan Bannis-Clemens, Joan Cullen are going to run roughshod over the rest of us. This is the way, again, and I hate to keep on coming back to this, but we had Patricia Roberts Miller on the show early this spring. And she wrote that book, Demagoguery and Democracy. Right? And one of the things that she says in that book was that this is always the vulnerability of a democracy. The biggest challenge to a democracy is demagoguery, right? Coupled with apathy, coupled with disengagement. When you have a culture that has given up on its democracy, right, no longer sees a connection with civic participation as something that is, part of what they do, it leaves open the opportunity for these kind of opportunists, these extremists, these demagogues, to force this, in this case, Christian nationalism down our throats. They are not doing it illegally. They are not manipulating the vote, but they are taking advantage of our lack of engagement in our civic life. And I'm not here to tell people listening to this show, blah, 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 you're not doing enough, blah, 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 blah. I'm the last person that's going to do that. But it points to what the problem is, right? This is one of the reasons, God, you've got these, parent community organizations that are, in Pennridge School District, and Central Bucks School District, in Southern Area School District, and Kutztown School District, and Palisades School District, right, in Council Rock and Quakertown, right, in Lehigh Valley. Right? You've got these groups that are kind of organizing and kind of doing that, right? But we're playing catch up. And this, of course, is not something that is specific to Pennsylvania, specific to Bucks County. This is kind of nationwide. Some of the things that we focus on in this show when we haven't been so focused on the school board stuff, right? If you look over the past several years, is that, the guests that we've brought on and so have been an attempt, right, are trying to kind of account for and explain and talk about the ways in which disengagement is being fostered by these billionaires, right? Whether it's voter suppression, whether it's gerrymandering, right? Whether it's kind of like providing like bottomless pockets to right-wing organizations, whether it's funding climate denial, mass deception, disengagement. I mean, all this stuff is part of what we're contending with, right? And we're seeing it in our backyards right now. So anyways, so that's Jordan Blomgren's claim. I'll go back a little bit. The claim is that, look, you put us here. I don't know what everyone's complaining about. This is what we were elected to do.
We are doing exactly what we promised the community that we would be doing. I want to remind too that there was a lot of talk about the teachers and their expertise. Oh, sorry, I wanted to mention, because PEA is here tonight, that there is no surprise that there's a lot of them against us. When we did run, the PEA donated money to the slate of candidates to their campaign who ran against us. And like I said before, we are doing exactly what we promised the community, the majority of the community who voted us in, that we would do.
All right, here's the next point. The next point he's saying, because there's a teacher's contract here, right? We haven't even talked enough about that. I wish there was an easy way to get somebody from the PEA to come and talk on this show. I would love to have somebody from the teachers union to come on and talk on the show. I'm going to do another round of reach out to them. I'm usually, when I reach out to folks, what I'd love to have somebody, I'll get a thank you. Yep, we'll keep it in mind if you need any help, or yeah, if there's that opportunity comes up, that kind of stuff, right? But I mean, I would love to hear the voice of kind of union leadership about what's going on right now. We had the second part of the Pennridge School Board meeting when you had public comment was all about the teachers and talking about their contract. The contract is being held up. The contract expires at the end of June. Megan Bennis-Clemens in the same meeting says that, yep, basically spills the beans on all this. Yep, basically we offer the teachers a 2% raise, right? We offer the teachers a 2% raise. And that's what we're going to do. Plus an increase in their health care, increase in their cost of their health care. But the teachers spoke one after the other, just as the community members spoke one after the other, is that the Pennridge teachers are paid 30% less than teachers in the surrounding districts. Right? And they're under assault from this extremist school board. And they've been doing a bang-up job despite all of that. I'll attest to that. My kids' teachers, I'm just in awe. The vast majority of them are just amazing. And how those teachers I kind of can stay focused in the midst of all this is really amazing. But what Jordan Blomgren just did there, and I don't know if people caught this or people paid enough attention to this, but what Jordan Blomgren just basically did is just threaten the teachers. She basically said to them, you get this is our retribution on you. Oh, you want a good contract? Well, the teachers union gave money to people who ran against us. So she's basically telling them, this is what you get. This is what you get if you don't get on board the extremist bandwagon. We're going to come back for you. I mean, I grew up in Utica, New York, right? Utica, New York has got a long history of mob, right? It's been a mob town. It's an open secret. Nobody needs to kind of like pretend, right? Everybody knew this. And this kind of dynamic is a mob dynamic. What would you expect? You disrespect me? We're going to come after you, right? That's what she's saying. Except she's got the freaking cross in her other hand. All right, more.
I just want to remind a few things about the Vermilion. I'll speak to that. We have brought in consultants, Jacobs and Calic, to train teachers to actually write curriculum. So to say that that's not happened before is just not
Was that brought
true.
by the board or the administration?
By the administration.
Administration.
That's fine. It's not out of our.
Okay, so here you go again. This is where you get this kind of, I mean, I don't even know, I don't know if she's consciously lying, consciously being kind of deceptive, or if this is just kind of this is just the way that she is, right? And that goes with the rest of them. They do this all the time. It's not like we haven't brought consultants. Vermillion's a consultant that we're bringing in, but it's not like there hasn't been other consultants. Like here's this other consultant, and they named the other one. Again, they've been hammering this. They've been going after the consultants that were brought in to consult with DEI stuff, diversity, equity, and inclusion stuff, which the board under Joan Cullen's leadership, they destroyed that too. But they brought in these consultants, right? The key point, the voice you hear, right? You hear Jordan Blomgren said, it's not as if we haven't brought in consultants before. Ron Wirtz jumps in. He said, wait a minute, was that brought in by the board or by the administration? And Blomgren knows the answer to that question. She said, oh, the administration. But that's not without our purview. Well, that's still within our purview as the board to do it. But what she's doing, she's saying, look, this has been done before. This is normal. And what Ron Wirtz and some other people start talking about is like, no, this is not normal. This is not the way this proceeds. The administration in the past has brought in consultants to work with teachers to reform the curriculum or to bring in community input. It is different than for a school board that is ideologically driven to hire consultants on their own and then force it onto the district. Now, in this case, you've got Dr. Bolton, who's the superintendent, who's sitting right there. So who the hell knows? He's probably in on the dig too. I mean, this is where it is. So this is like real key. So she's done a few things so far already in this like short. It's only 1:30 into her remarks. Number one, right? First thing she does is she kind of is deceptive about representing the majority of the community. Right? She uses the slippage between like the majority of people who actually voted in the election and then say that is the majority of the community. And then people, well, you can throw your hands up. Well, it's true. I guess the majority voted for him. So the majority must want that. And he even gets people in the community thinking that if they are against this extremism, oh, maybe they are in the minority. There is a way that kind of language pervades and kind of infects our mindsets of how we perceive each other. You have these extremists who are carrying out a very unpopular agenda, Christian nationalist agenda. And they're using the mantle of the majority to say that, hey, what do you want? What we do with that in the community is important, right? And I always think about this example, right? Is that, I had heard ever since I moved to the area, this conservative area. There's no Democrats around, blah, 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 blah. There's no independents, and there's definitely nobody on the left, blah, 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 right? And you looked around and you saw yard signs, right? The yard signs were all Republican. It'd be rare that you found like someone supporting a Democratic candidate. When I first moved here, right? And so I've got people telling me this is a really conservative area, right? There's not very many Democrats around, right? And then I look around. What do I see? I see evidence that supports that belief. I don't see a lot of things. And I remember at the time when I first moved here trying to reach out to the Pennridge Democrats and be like, oh, well, what's going on? What's organizing and things like that? Nothing. There was like one or two people who would do some stuff for the elections, but that was it. It was not an active chapter. It wasn't like you could go things. That's changed now. Right? But then Trump got elected. A lot of people woke up. Obviously, what the hell is going on? And the next election came, right? Guess what? People started organizing. After these school board elections, people started organizing. And suddenly, you start finding out, oh, look at these signs. They're not all Republicans. Wait a minute. As a matter of fact, when you go canvassing, right? If you go canvassing, you get a list of kind of like registered Democrats in your area, for example. I was stunned. I'm looking at kind of like registered Democrats in your area, and I'm like, it's like half my development are Democrats. I never would have known. And then signs start going up, right? I remember when I first came here, I was like the person who put out the Obama sign, right? That got destroyed 3 times. I had to replace it 3 times. That confirmed to me that idea. You moved to conservative area, right? But then other people, and I talked to other people, said, oh, I didn't even realize. And they're like, yeah, I didn't realize either. And people are fighting each other, right? That is like the key. You have the people who stepped out, were not interested in kind of like organized partisan politics at all, right? And basically stepped up and said, yep, I'm going to try to help get something going. And now there's active work going on in the kind of like the Pennridge Democrats, right? There's organizations being built, right? For several election cycles now, right? To kind of find new school board candidates, to kind of get people mobilized, to have them show up to meetings, right? That is awesome. Right? But what Jordan Blomgren does there is she basically, that first thing that she did is she attempts to basically reinstate this narrative that the majority of people want the Christian nationalist agenda, and it's just not accurate. The second thing she does, again, just to review, is she threatens the teachers. She basically says, hey, what do you want? The teachers union donated against us, so guess what? We're coming after your contract. You expect anything good from? No, because we're going to pay you back now, right? And then the third thing she does is she claims that what we're doing is normal. The board has always done this, and it's not true. And she knows it because she's able to answer Ron Wirtz's question. She says, the board has done this before, right? And then we've hired consultants before. So whoa, who's the we? Ron Wirtz says, wait, who did? The administration or the board? Oh, and she's like, I don't know. Here, listen to it again. Listen to this. Here, we'll take it back a little bit, and then we'll go on.
That's fine. It's not out of our purview to not suggest that. Why are you speaking? I'm speaking. Why are you speaking? I didn't interrupt you when you were speaking.
Here, I'm going to go back.
Suggest that.
Administration.
That's fine. It's not out of our purview to not suggest that. Why are you speaking? I'm speaking. Why are you speaking? I didn't interrupt you when you were speaking. I was. I gave direct eye contact. I was actively listening, actually.
She shakes her head.
So
wags her head.
Also, I want to mention that in August, when we approved a very similar contract for another consultant, that contract was put on the board agenda before the board, not at the finance committee meeting. But again, that's not something that gets brought up because that wasn't looked into at the time, just this specific one.
But again,
right.
By the administration.
I'd
ask the members of the audience to please remain silent.
Here's the lawyer.
There's been a time for public comment, and that time has concluded. So please remain respectful and give the board a time to speak. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I'm not lying. So again, I'll just end with, again, we were elected, and we are doing what we promised the community that we would do. So thank you to the community.
I'm going to add that unfortunately I did run with them, and
right, except Ron.
Excuse me.
Ron's not fulfilling his promises. That's
yes.
for sure.
My promises were parents over politicians, and I am standing behind that. They are not. They are following the politicians. They are not listening to the parents. Oh, here comes the interrupter again. No, I'm not.
You interrupted me. You interrupted me.
I'm still true to what we were going to expand civics. What? No, we took credits away. So there are many things. Take a look at the slogan. I can send it to you.
I'll send it to you. I'll bring it to next meeting. We'll make it transparent. Put it up there. Go point by point. Where you haven't. You haven't. And we were the suckers to run with you.
Ooh. Oh, this is an honorable person.
Yeah, there you go. And then that's the perfect place to close it, right? She says, we were the suckers to run with you, right? This is how she closes out. This is like, and he says, oh, what an honorable person, right? The point he's making, he's trying to basically distance himself from the rest of you. Yeah, I ran with you. We ran over parents over politicians, but what you guys are doing exactly the opposite. You're following the politicians, not the parents. We said that we were going to introduce more civics, right? This is what Ron Wirtz said. We said we were going to introduce more civics. And what do? You're cutting the social studies curriculum, which is civics, right? So again, this is it. But look, this is the way it is. This is the way this politics work. The people who show up to vote, the people who show up, people who organize, I mean, they're the ones who get elected, and then they dictate to the rest of us what goes on. The fact is that, you know, the conservative right, in particular the kind of like this Christian nationalist conservative right, the emergent kind of extremist kind of current in the Republican Party, which is, you know, for all practical purposes, owns the Republican Party right now. These people had been organizing like this for quite some time. They are skilled. You know, I was looking at this, you probably know Andy Meehan's organization called Right for Bucks, right? And we had Amy Connect, who's on the show every once in a while. She'll come on and we'll talk about stuff. She actually kind of went to one of these meetings, right? He has these open meetings, online meetings, right? Some of them are in person, but you got online meetings where you can join. She wanted to find out what they were about and what they did there, and found out that instead of it being like a bunch of kind of like people just spouting conspiracy theories, there was that, but the bulk of the meeting is really focused on training people how to run for office, how to target particular elected officials, right? Which offices to go at, look for seats that nobody is running in, and begin, and again, Right for Bucks, their purpose is to kind of like overturn the leadership of the Bucks County Republican Party. Right? They're as much at war with the Bucks County Republican Party leadership as they are with the Democrats. For the Democrats, they think that, you know, Democrats are all terrorists, right? But that gives you a sense of what's going on there. Right? They've been trained, they've been training, and they have lots of money behind it. Right? Because look, if you're an individual, you look at what Paul Martino has done in Bucks County. Right, your guy who's got hundreds of millions of dollars or whatever just sitting around, right? And you've got kind of like you've got kind of whatever, like a bug up your butt about some particular issue. You can basically fund a movement, right? Or really what you can do is you basically take your money and you have your message shout down everybody else's message. And then any organization that wants to say what you're going to say, you're going to give them tons of money to say that same thing over and over again. That's what he did. Look what Jeffrey Yass is doing. Richest person in Pennsylvania. I'm sure that still bugs Paul Martino that he's not the richest person, and he'll never be the richest person. Can't even file correct permits for his new restaurant bankroll down in Philly. But that's what they do, right? They've got the money and not the people. But they've got enough money that they can fund enough people, right, to dominate the structure, to dominate the machine, because they understand the machine. Right? There's a reason, right? This goes way back to the 1970s. Right? Paul Weyrich, founder of the Heritage Foundation. Right? There's that famous quote. Let me see if I can pull this up right now real quick. I mean, Paul Weyrich basically came out and basically said it, you know, ages ago. Republicans, right, and the right-wing Republicans in particular, do not win when a lot of people come out to vote. Right? And this whole idea, let me see. Here we go. I'm sure this is probably going to come right up. Let's see if it'll. Nah, it's going to make me do it. Never. We'll do it another time. Well, Paul Weyrich, this is a speech that he gave, right? And let me see if I get the date for you at least. This was what? It was the 80s, right? 70s or 80s. And he basically came out and he said, look, we don't want people to come out and vote, right? As a matter of fact, there's an inverse relationship between us winning, the religious right, the right wing, the extremists, and the number of people that vote. The more people that come out to vote, the less our chances are to winning. So our goal is to reduce the number of people who vote. Yes, Emily, the Powell memo, exactly. Paul Weyrich understood that at the point. If you can that he knew that the right wing, the extremists, were in the minority in this country, increasingly so. And he knew that their policies were unpopular, right? But he understood that the machine works in such a way that if you can reduce the number of people that vote, whether that's through direct voter suppression, whether that's through gerrymandering, or whether that's just kind of getting people disaffected from civics, right? To make them hate the government, to make them throw up their hands and say both sides are the same, right? There's nothing we could do. These politicians all suck. Every single politician sucks. If you get people apathetic or not caring or disenfranchised or despairing, they don't turn out to vote too as well. And that will allow for a minority of people in order to take over, whether it's a municipal government or whether it's a kind of national government. And that's what the goal is. Right? It's crazy. It's crazy. Janet comes in. Yes, this is great. Great question, Janet. So what are the plans for deploying level field funds, small dollars, but best impact, and plans for future fundraising? So I can tell you this right now is that what we have, I forget the last number, back and forth to the folks at Level Field, and the idea at this point is to look at which organizations are going to be best served by giving that money to, right? So basically I'll tell you what I'm doing at this point, right? At this point right now, starting to reach out to some of the local organizations, both in the Pennridge School District and the Central Bucks School District, and basically saying and finding out are these organizations that that the Raging Chicken pack, basically, right, that we're allowed to donate to, right? So there's all these kind of basically statewide rules that go into that, and really the money is going to go into assisting the school board candidates in the fall. At this point, I'm assuming that we are not going to get like crazy amounts of money that are going to come in. So what that probably means is we're going to limit that to a couple school districts. I mentioned this on the show last week, but on our on Patreon, I'm going to kind of set up some things like a Patreon discussion with patrons, where I welcome anybody who's say a patron for the show to join into that conversation and to talk a little bit about ideas that people have and thoughts that people have. The other thing the second thing that's kind of related to this is that for the long-term stretch, is the important thing is going to be, I think, is to set up a kind of like an advisory board, right? And so folks that are invested in kind of thinking about answering exactly the kind of questions that you have, what's the most effective and most impactful way to deploy funds. I don't want that to be simply just my decision. I think that the more minds that we get kind of associated with like-minded people that are looking for ways to be kind of impactful, the better. So that I hope to have, so there's those two things I think are going on. Next week, probably, I'm thinking I can get this together for next week. Next week, at the earliest, right? But that's what would be kind of an ideal time, I think. Next week or the end of next week, to send stuff out to patrons of the show. I might put out some additional invitations for some people who've expressed some interest to have a kind of open discussion, right? We'll find a kind of a Zoom time where if people can join, you want to kind of come in, it won't not be the kind of thing that'll be aired. We're not going to kind of live broadcast it. It'll be just for us talking about stuff. And then we should generate some ideas, right? And then, like I said, I'm going to reach out. I've got a couple of organizations that I'm trying to find out if they're able to, if we are able to donate directly to them. Okay. The money that is raised in this kind of PAC, right, is meant to go towards candidates, right? Is meant to go to help people get elected, right? But there are, these kind of legal restrictions that we need to make sure. So that's, I just had that conversation, started that conversation like a couple weeks ago with the folks at Level Field 2 as well. And they were saying, okay, let's nail down some organizations. So that's kind of where things are at this point. My guess for future fundraising, as you know, I've been talking about that on the show. I've been talking about Level Field on the show. But I'll be honest with you, I've been somewhat hesitant to go too hard on the fundraising quite yet. In part because, again, full transparency, this is due to me. And I want to make sure that things are above board and that we're doing it the right way. And that if we are able to kind of start raising some decent amount of money, that we're going to be able to use it in the most effective way. And I think that means, okay, where do we want to locate it, and who are some of the other people that are willing to be part of that conversation to make sure that that it's not just me making decisions by myself, right? I mean, that I think is kind of really critical. I find that's important simply because, well, number one, there's people in the community who are doing a heck of a lot more organizing than I am, right? I mean, I've had this show, right? I'm kind of connected to people through kind of social media and things like this, but there's people on the ground that understand what the needs are a heck of a lot better than I do. And I want to make sure that it's there. And, frankly, there's also that grounds of accountability, right? We want to make sure that there's other people that are involved in the process to make sure that, that we know that the money's going where it should go. That's what it is. So I hope that begins to answer your question. And we'll have some, again, I'll update folks throughout the summers here, but this is really the, go time. So my hope, the biggest question I have at this point is like, when is going to be the best time to deploy most of that, most of the resources that we have? My guess would be a little later on in the summer as we get closer to the election, right? The last thing you want to do is to spend a bunch of money and then it just goes off into the ether as people are on vacation and so on. I mean, again, campaigns that I've worked on in the past, I mean, this is kind of what I'm drawing from, campaigns that I've worked on in the past. And when you're looking at kind of election cycles, is that, that there's kind of say go time. So like right now, the summer, right? If say, for example, we were to kind of invest in some, the organizations over the summer, that money is going to go directly, my guess would be directly into capacity building and into door knocking, right? Because you'd want to actually support those people that are to go out and kind of get things out. Maybe it goes into something like yard signs, right? At this point, we start kind of, again, building that, we'll say more of a passive infrastructure, right? People are seeing that other people are motivated by these candidates, say in the Pennridge School District or in the Central Bucks School District, or kind of maybe even some other ones for that matter. When you get a little bit later on in the election, right, when you get kind of more towards the fall, right, then we might be talking more about social media campaigns, right? Or maybe, again, this is my thought, there's kind of a messaging campaign that can be important about how to make sure that you're kind of getting messages out to the right people. That's going to depend a lot about, what we're able to do, what we're going to do, if there are things that we can do in-house, right? In other words, with a group of people deciding, okay, we're going to do this on our own, right? We're going to basically release the messaging on our own. We cannot coordinate with any campaign, right? But we certainly are going to basically say we have an issue here. We have an issue and we have an agenda to basically get the extremism out of our schools. So that's kind of where we're at. I hope that begins to answer your question, Janice, because that's I think it's a good one. Okay, if any other questions, people please throw them in. The one other thing that I wanted to I'll kind of throw on the table for today. Let's see, it's not this one. Go back here. So the one other thing that just came out, and this goes right to the thanks to Jenny Stevens, who's been just doing great reporting here. This is something to check out. Now, we don't have another board meeting in the Pennridge School District until June, right? And one of the things that has emerged, Jenny just published this a couple days ago. It's called Pennridge School District to eliminate 4 curriculum supervisory positions. I'll just read a couple of the opening kind of paragraphs here so you get a sense of what's happening. So it says the Pennridge School Board majority intends to eliminate 4 subject supervisors who oversee K-12 reading, English, language, along with K-12 mathematics, K-12 science, K-12 social studies. This is according to information provided to the Beacon from credible sources and multiple social media platforms. Removal of these administrative roles will require a vote by the school board and may appear as an agenda item as early as June. It's June 7th, I believe, is the meeting. And there is speculation that the supervisory reorganization may be tied in part to the district's recent decision to engage Vermilion Education, LLC, who was trained to rewrite the district's curriculum in April, as we've discussed already on the show today. Laura Foster, a parent and taxpayer in the district, said teachers at the school have confirmed the removal of the 4 supervisors. Quote, "It's devastating to the teachers that I've spoken to who have trusted and relied upon these curriculum supervisors to inform their teaching practices, to listen to them and to take their feedback about what's working and what's not working in the school. To lose them as a resource is a detriment to the school and it's a detriment to my children's education," she said. Foster also believes that the removal of the supervisors is due to the hiring of Vermilion. Quote, "To see these positions being eliminated in favor of Vermilion, their lack of experience and their clear right political agenda is devastating," she added. Right. So this is what we got next, right? So, I mean, again, I think Laura Foster is right on, right? I mean, you just see this move. Vermilion Education gets eliminated, and then suddenly, these other curricular supervisors who have been working with teachers who have built up this trust over a long period of time are just going to be stripped away. So who will be the resources? Vermilion Education and maybe the Independence Law Center, right? And that's what we've got. It's crazy stuff, everybody. It's crazy stuff. It's crazy stuff. So yeah, so there we have it. Anybody got anything else for the day? I got a couple things on the, again, more irons in the fire where it comes to guests that are coming up here. I don't want to kind of completely monopolize or completely go in the school district every single week, as we haven't. It's, I think last week when we talked to, I really loved talking to Christina Marusik, right, about her book, New War on Cancer. You have not checked out that show, please do. Or, it's just been a pretty good run. If you haven't checked out our show with Catherine Joyce, for example, investigative editor within These Times, we had a great discussion with her about Moms for Liberty and some of the background that's there. Also absolutely critical, also important. So do check it out. And we've got some kind of cool stuff coming up. So please look forward to it. So anyways, if there's nothing else for the good of the order, everybody, I'm going to wish you a good day. And I'll let you know what's coming up on Out to Coop Live. For those folks who are patrons of the show, look out for stuff in your inbox about a time where we can schedule a Zoom meeting. I might ask you to talk about your availability, about when would be a good time to do it, so that we get as much participation as we can and have ideas that we can. I promise I will do my best, at least not to take too much of your time, but like to get some ideas. And part of what I'm looking for would be ideas about, again, basically what Janet just said there. What are some of the best ways of deploying the funds that we've raised for the fall elections, and along with that, who would be good to have on an advisory committee, right, to make sure that that we have some more collaborative discussion about how to use these funds. And then frankly, that next step is then, yes, how do you use them, but then how do we go about fundraising to kind of be even more impactful? like I said, I've been a little bit hesitant about pushing too hard on the fundraising before we've actually gone through a process and we're sure that we've kind of like dotted our I's and crossed our T's. Right? There we have it. Anyways, everybody, I appreciate your time. Appreciate you hanging out. Appreciate the questions and the thoughts. But this is going to do it for me today. And we'll look forward to more. And I hope that you'll tune in to The Signal. It'll be out on Wednesday. It's just going to be a good show that we're recording later on today. I'll lead up to Cyril and the folks at the Bucks County Beacon to check it out. Hey, Linda, thanks so much. I appreciate it. I'm glad to have you aboard. Love all the kind of input and thoughts. It'd be fantastic. Also look forward and know that the next time around, we may be bringing someone new aboard for the summer, which I'll once I know that for sure, I'll let you know. And maybe that's going to help with expanding some of the school board coverage that we've been able to do, in particular to try to maybe pull some clips from some of the surrounding school boards outside of the Pennridge, in addition to what we're doing for Pennridge. But the more that we can help contribute, gotten great feedback from people in the community saying that this has been really great to be able to pull out clips and hear just clips instead of having to watch the whole school board meetings. We want to continue to do that, and hopefully we'll be able to kind of deepen that as we go forward. So everybody, want to remind you can help support this show by heading on over to patreon.com/rcpress, and you can become a patron for as little as $5 a month. This is Kevin Mahoney, creator and founder of Raging Chicken, and we'll be back on Friday for our Friday Politics Roundup. And look for us on Patreon and look for us on social media. Until then, have an awesome week. Almost the end of the school year. I know it's a crazy time, but here we are. All right, everybody, take it easy. See ya!
Let me try my people call.